Hey folks, Nick here from another BookTube channel. Today we are continuing the Swamp Thing read-along. We will be reading Swamp Thing issue number 23, a story by Alan Moore, with art by Stephen Bissette and John Totleben. I highly recommend checking out the previous episodes in this series so that you're all caught up on where we are with the story. Taking a look at the cover here, cover by Tom Yates. I think this might be the last one that Yates does for the series before Bissette takes over cover duties. It's a pretty good one to go out on. I like the focal point around Swamp Thing carrying Abby, rescuing her from these grasping vines. It's a pretty good one. Nothing to complain about there. But it's the interiors that I like the most. So let's talk a little bit more about what's going on in Swamp Thing number 23. So previously, Swampy, manic depressive, just absolutely, he's given up on his humanity completely ever since he found out that he is not really Alec Holland. He's just a plant with Alec Holland's consciousness that he's absorbed. He has left. He's abandoned his body in the swamp, and he is just stretching his mind out within the green, totally at peace. And this issue is so well written. The narration in this issue is so good. I wish I could just read the issue straight through to you. I'm not going to do that because I know that that's like boring. It's not what this is about. But Alan Moore is so good. His writing chops are so strong, and it's really showing here. I will just read this opening page just to give you a sense. Again, I mean, if you watch that first episode I did here, I gave an example of what the writing was on the series before Alan Moore joined, and it was so expositional and kind of dry. And now this is where we've graduated towards. There is a red and angry world. Red things happen there. The world eats your wife, eats your friends, eats all the things that make you human. And you become a monster. And the world just keeps on eating. I couldn't take that, being eaten. I couldn't take the red world, so I walked out, and I left my body behind, and I'm somewhere else now. And the accompanying images are of the close-ups of insects eating each other, and as we're pulling back, we're seeing they're on top of Swamp Thing's body, which is just a husk in the Louisiana swamps. And we get our splash page, our splash title page. The name of this issue is Another Green World. Oh, God, beautiful splash page. And so we join Swamp Thing as his mind is just loose in the green, and he's feeling somewhere timeless. He's feeling at peace, and he's happy. We see it on his face. He's jubilant. He's got a smirk on. He looks like he's having a nice time. He's finally where he belongs. But in this sea of green, all of this green color we've got here, there is a cancer of red that has made its way in. Swamp Thing senses that something is wrong, and he finds it there. And he's going to start narrowing in on what is causing that disruption in the green. We flip on over to the real world in Louisiana. Couple of, looks like college students out for a drive. They pull over because one of them claims he sees the Jolly Green Giant. So he runs off to go take a look. And as he does that, his friends remaining in the car are approached by the Floronic Man, Jason Woodrue, Dr. Jason Woodrue. And we get a panel down here of complete silence in which we as the readers know that this creature here, we know what he's doing there. He's taking care of these boys that were left behind, and when their friend comes back, I don't think he's going to find them in very good condition. And indeed, he approaches his car. He's sweating. He's a little nervous, and he sees them all covered in vines, strangled, beer dripping everywhere, and so he runs away from the car. And as he's running, we have here the progression of him leaving the car, and these vines start to kind of come down from the sky, and they snag him here. And they've got him around the throat, and they yank him up. His feet are leaving the ground, which we can clearly see here. And we get this great I love the way that he is being pulled up, and then our view on the other side is being pulled down, so that we're looking downward into the eyes of Jason Woodrue. So it's a great movement here of up and then down. Really, really strong. And Swamp Thing is picking up on that this red cancerous growth in the green. It's affiliated with the name Woodrue, and he's trying to remember where has he heard that name before. Who is Woodrue? He remembers Abigail, his friend, his beautiful friend, white hair like an avalanche. He senses her also in the waking world, and she's out. She's still hoping that that Alec is going to come back to Swamp Thing's body. And as she's driving out, she comes across the abandoned car and the unfortunate victims of Jason Woodrue. I love this sequence down here where we have a long vertical panel, kind of half long vertical panel, where she's just in silhouette, but you still have the white of her hair to make her distinct. And in the foreground, you have the extreme foreground of this shoe, which is, it's a lot bigger than her, so it's a really extreme depth of perception, illusion here. But we're seeing the giant shoe, and then as we move over, we're seeing the feet that the shoe belongs to. And she doesn't see it at first, but in this great Kriegstein-esque sequence of panels here, she turns, she looks up, and she sees the dangling foot. She sees the dead body. So great sequence there. And as she screams, she starts to run off, and those vines that we established as a threat earlier that caught this guy, they're going after her now as well. They're snaking around her ankles, around her feet, and she is calling out to the only person that she could think to, which is Alec. And upon hearing the name Alec, Swamp Thing is trying to associate that with what he can remember. He's thinking, is it Alec Woodrue? Is that where I know the name? And then he realizes he thought that he was Alec Holland. That's how he's ended up here. And he's slowly piecing together again. He's bringing his mind back together to remember how he got here, who he is, who Dr. Sunderland is, who General Sunderland is, who Dr. Woodrue is. And he remembers that Woodrue is the one who wrote the report on Swamp Thing that proved that he wasn't really Alec Holland, that he was just a plant. We move on over here. Upon saying Woodrue's name, we see where he currently is. He's in the town of LaCroix, known for their terrible drinks. And as he enters that town, he's bringing all of this green in, and he's wrecking the place. Upon his, we could see he's obviously, his eyes are huge here, so he's overseeing everything that's happening in this smaller panel, where we see the vines take over the police house first, and then the school, and then the church, and then the townspeople. Let's see, they say it's 1:32 a.m., so they're sleepy. They come out of their houses. They have the sheriff draws his gun, and he is quickly dispatched by Woodrue. And he makes some demands. He demands that somebody provide him with a tape recorder and a video camera, because he has a message for the world. So one of the townsfolk grabs it, and the first thing that the Floronic Man says is, everyone else go back to your homes while I record this message. Once they're back in their homes, he basically traps them in their homes with vegetation. He overgrows the doors and windows so they can't get out. And in fact, they specify here it was an airtight seal. And each of those homes all has at least one potted plant. And so what Woodrue is doing is he's accelerating the photosynthetic process of those plants. So they're pumping out oxygen at an alarming rate, and it's making the residents within the homes very jittery and nervous, and they don't know why. And with all that proliferation of oxygen, when somebody finally lights a cigarette to relax, boom, total fireball, and every house just goes up like a string of firecrackers. It's described here. It said, the kid who's filming it, William Ainslinger, his parents and elder sister had been in the third house from the left. Dr. Woodrue leaves him alive, tells him to bring the cassette to a nearby town and show the recording to whoever's there, just to pass along the message that he is coming. And now we're back with Swamp Thing. He's still in the green, and he's had the epiphany. And I really like the way this reads, so I am just going to read this part to you, and just look along at the visuals. As this is happening, he's still floating, but he's kind of coming back to himself, while Abby is still being pursued by these vines. So keep that action in mind while I read this. It was Woodrue's name, his name on the notes, his mind in the green. It is Woodrue who has done all of this. Woodrue, he took my humanity away from me, caused so much agony. And when I thought the agony was over, that I'd found peace, he tainted that as well. Woodrue, they wouldn't let me be human, and I became a monster. But they wouldn't let me be a monster, so I became a plant. And now you won't let me be a plant. You, Woodrue, everything that I loved, you should have left me something, Woodrue. You shouldn't have forced me to give up all of this. And as he's saying this, he's getting closer and closer to coming back to himself. Abby's screaming, the vines are getting closer to her, and I love this panel layout where she's reaching towards his body that's so far away still. We've got her in the extreme foreground, him in the background, and she's being dragged away. We can barely see him. We get the close-up of her, and then the hand, Swamp Thing's hand, has risen, and on the next page, we get the money shot. Look at that. Oh, beautiful. Swamp Thing is back, baby. He is awake. There's a frog jumping out. They got flowers. We got bugs. There's so much detail on this page. I freaking love this page. And then another one. Just so we get our money's worth, we get another great hero shot of him standing over Abby. And she's looking at him, and she asks, Alec? And he says, no, not Alec. And then he walks off because he's got to go find Woodrue. This is a really great sequence here. The boy who was filming Woodrue, he's over at the next town, and he's dropped off the tape with what he's seen. The officers have watched it, and we get a little glimpse here of what the next issue is going to be. They watched the video. They called Morgan City. They called Washington, and then Washington called the Justice League. So the Justice League is going to get involved pretty soon. Which is pretty exciting. This is a DC comic after all. We haven't seen any costume heroes yet in this run, but that's going to change soon. We also get a really interesting, just like this page here is really interesting because these characters aren't super important, but this is just an emotional beat that I think is really strong. Where the sergeant that watches the video, he's going home. He wakes up his wife and explains to her what he witnessed today, and so he takes all of the house plants out of his home, drops it on the lawn, and then he takes what is it? He calls it paraquat, and he destroys the lawn. He destroys all the plants, and then he looks at this tree that they've got at the bottom of the lawn. At the bottom of the garden, there was a magnolia tree. Janie had planted it when they moved into the house 20 years ago. It was a good old tree. Steve had built a treehouse in it summer before last. Luther Galen wasn't a young man. The job took a long time. And we could see the just tears running down his face, the anguish. They've carved their name into the tree. It's heartbreaking. I mean, they people form that connection sometimes with the stuff on their land. But yeah, he's got to protect his family. And so he's just taking everything out that could possibly be used against them. Over here, Woodrue is still burning things to the ground. He's still wreaking havoc. And there's a woman here begging, no more, please. And we get a really just great monologue that follows through basically to the end of the issue. And I'm gonna read it to you because it's so good. The writing in this is so good. No more, no more. Did you say no more when you and your fellow hamburgers were stripping the land bare? When they dipped their chainsaws into the tender flesh of my people? Did you say no more then? There will be more. Lots more. For I am Woodrue. I am the pain and the bitterness of the woods. I am come to announce the green millennium. I am one with the wilderness. Its will works through me. For I asked of it, saying, what would you have me do? And it said, purify. And it said, destroy. Destroy the creatures that would destroy us, that would destroy the ecosphere with their poisons and bulldozers. Cut them down like blighted wood. Let us have another green world. That's what it said to me. Another green world, as there was at the beginning, before the beasts crawled up out of the oceans, those long green centuries where no bird sang, where no dog barked, where there was no noise, where there was no screaming meat. For I am the regret and anger of the forests. And then he's cut off by the deep voice of Swamp Thing, and we get this incredibly iconic image. This is such a well-known. This image has been used and reprinted on other things. It's such an incredible image of Swamp Thing, and then we get him echoing what the woman said at the beginning of this scene. No more. The end. Next up, The Roots. That brings us to the end of Swamp Thing, issue number 23. Let me know your thoughts on this. Let me know if I missed anything that was really important. I really like this issue. I think the writing in it is top-notch. I think it's Alan Moore doing some of his finest work, and that's just going to continue throughout the series. So that's all. Thank you very much for spending some time with me today. But now it's time to get back to reading.